3, 4, 5.
Hey, would you be an admiral or something or a king? And to his praises we shall always sing. And look what he's done for us, he's filled us up with cheer. A Lord bless Charlie was the man who invented beer, 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 tiddly beer, 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 tiddly beer, beer, beer. The Lord bless Charlie Mops.
B-double-E-double-R-U-N.
Look out!
25 minutes past quitting time. 7 of us crammed into that truck of mine. Paying no attention to the highway sign. Still 90 mile an hour toward the county line. Oh, quick sack, 12-pack back again. It's a B-double-E-double-R-U-N.
My buddies and their babies letting down their hair. As long as we're together, it don't matter where. Ain't got a lot of money, but we just don't care. Knowing that the fun is in the getting there. Aztec long legs, paycheck spend. Oh, it's a B-double-E-double-R-U-N. Oh, I can't stop thinking what the hell they were drinking when they made this county dry.
I got a week-long thirst, and to make it worse, Lord, it's my turn to drive.
Oh, laughing and a bragging and a carrying on. We're loaded up a wagon and we're headed home.
I guess half a dozen cases doesn't last that long. Come tomorrow morning, it'll be all gone. Yeah, let's turn around and leave town sounds again. Like a B-double-E-double-R-U-N.
Hey, like a B-double-E-double-R-U-N. Hey, come on, Garth, let's get in the truck. Okay, I'm driving.
Gotcha. All right. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the August 2020 LBG meeting. Let's see. We got our intro slide up. If you're here, go ahead and say something in the chat. Tell us what you're drinking, what you've brewed lately. I don't have the chat up right now, so maybe Frank or somebody has to pop in and narrate on some of our check-in or commentary out there. But check in on, let us know you're here. I'm working on the Cigar City Hazy Pale right now. I need to go grab that in a minute. Frank, will you go ahead and next slide us, and we'll go ahead and get rolling. Oh, there's the welcome one with, so like I said, check in or tell us what you're working on in the comments there on the YouTube or the Facebook stream. Well, tell us what you've brewed lately. I'm getting ready to brew. I've been holding off till I moved, so now that I'm getting moved in, I'm gonna kick off a brew hopefully this weekend. Gonna do a pale ale. All right, next slide. There it is. All right, our upcoming events. We've got, you're in it, the August monthly meeting. And for those of you who are just with us, we're still doing the Hoppy Hour virtually, weekly now, every Thursday, 4:30 till about 7. Zoom call details are out there in the forum and on Facebook. If you want to find, if you don't know where that link is, we can definitely share that with you. Otherwise, our calendar's pretty thin right now. We got the next couple monthly meetings. We've got a slide for Parkville, so we can hit that then. And then soon we'll have the November monthly meeting coming along. And don't forget, that's our chance to do officer nominations. So start thinking about who you want to serve for us in 2021. I, in particular, will be at my second of 2 eligible terms for the presidency. So think about who you might want in that spot. And I think a couple of us are also, not just me, hitting our 2 years. So then we've got the holiday party coming up. Sooner we'll see what goes on as that gets closer. We may have to revisit that. So let's go ahead and go to our individual event slides here. All right, there's our Hoppy Hour one. Like I said, if you've not checked out a Thursday yet, come join us for some drinks and chit chat, and we might play a game or two here and there every Thursday. Now let's see what we got next. All right, Brewfest. As many have seen the email, we sent out a ballot and collected paid member responses on the whole situation with hosting Brewfest this year. We did end up voting and passing to postpone. That had been proposed by the Brewfest committee, but we went ahead and put an affirming vote out to members. So what we'll do is we'll postpone our celebration for next year. The booking window will open up here in late September, so we don't have a date locked down yet, but we have our first choice date that we'll be attempting to lock down as soon as the reservations become available. So, all right, the next slide there, Frank. Jake, you want to hit on Parkville? I know you sent an email. I don't think we heard back, but you want to just talk on that real quick?
Yeah, so I sent Warren an email just to try to get an update, see what their thoughts were. We're kind of getting close to the rescheduled date, so I'd like to think they're having discussions about how to proceed. I'm going to be surprised at this point if they do proceed with the festival. So it'll be interesting to hear how they go about refunds or rescheduling or whatever. But yeah, right now we don't have any updates, unfortunately.
So if it's in between meetings, I'll make sure to, if we hear back, I'll update on Facebook and forum just so everybody knows, since the date grows closer and you might want to know before the September meeting so you can brew or not brew. So, all right, next slide there, Frank. All right, shirts. Are you there, Genelia? Let's see. Yep, you want to just give a shirt update real quick?
Sure. So we ordered the shirts and they are in. I have them in my possession. So if you ordered one, we'll have it for you. We'll set up some either delivery or meetup times for Lawrence or in Joco, depending on where you're coming from. And we'll have you pick those up. Make sure you pay Jake, treasurer at lawrencebrewers.org. If you haven't already, he'll have a list of who's paid, hopefully, and give it to me so I know. We did get a few extra in each size, not a ton. So maybe when we're together in person someday soon, we can sell those. Or if you know someone who missed the deadline and they wear the size that I ordered, then we can sell that to them.
Cool, thanks. Next slide, please, Frank. Oh, treasure report. It's back to Jake. I'll let you take.
Right. Thanks, Ryan, and thanks for covering for me last month. Thanks to John too for you guys helping out. So much appreciated. Um, like Genelia mentioned, T-shirts will be checking, see if there's anybody who hasn't paid yet. I will try to reach out to anyone who identify that hasn't paid. Get those in if you haven't. So as far as memberships go, we're at 88 paid members. I'd say that's pretty good. We're doing pretty all right for the year. And thanks to everybody for the memberships that have been coming in. We just had, I think, another couple last night. So really appreciate that support. And if there's anybody out there still hasn't paid, go ahead and get those in. So our next slide here, these are our balances for this month. Had a few more T-shirt orders come in, and like I said, some memberships. So that put us pretty positive for the month. And the next slide gives you the sort of the breakdown for how we're doing throughout the year. Of course, those big spikes from last year, from 2019, are not going to be there this year. So I did go ahead and pay our insurance premium so that when we are ready to have a festival again, we'll be covered. I don't know about you all, but I'm ready to start planning the vaccine party. So whenever that's time, we can put something together. But yeah, that's about it. Our next slide has the sort of the distribution there. Not a lot of detail to share. Unfortunately, it's mostly like I mentioned, T-shirts and memberships. So yeah, thanks for everybody's support. I'll turn it back over to you, Ryan.
All right. I think, let's see, next, probably our library report. Let's see. Yep. Library report. Lynette?
Yep.
There?
Hello. Once again, there is unfortunately not much to report because that requires you to have books. But let me know what you're reading. If you have any suggestions, I will gladly take those. I will try to start doing some shopping for our library so we have all sorts of cool things to check out once we are able to meet again in person, hopefully by the end of the year. All right, that's all.
All right. Next up, fresh on the forum. I don't know if you've seen this in the news or happened to catch it when I posted on the forum. There's a French's mustard beer. I missed the sale online. So if anybody bought a 6-pack, I'd love to get my hands on a can. So, I'll gladly buy one off you. Otherwise, there's lots of Black is Beautiful beer releases going on. Let's see. On that note, Genelia, you want to just quick mention the service one comes out Friday, or what's the timing of that?
So Black is Beautiful first service comes out on Saturday, but you'll be able to pre-order cans Friday night at 8 o'clock. They will go live, and Courtney brewed it with Angelo. So 2 LBG connections for you.
Very cool. So otherwise, so the forum post there, if you missed the discussion on the Brewfest 2020 postponement, you can see that there on the forum, the various posts talking about that, everybody's thoughts. And then there's actually a new, they call it the Johnson County Ale Trail, just the kind of collection of all the Johnson County breweries. And there's a couple articles talking about that on there. So, all right, next slide. I think it's almost time for hops. All right, I'll let you take it over, Lee.
Okay, I think I got myself unmuted there. So to build upon, we talked about yeast, we talked about malt, talked about building your grain bill. So we're going to talk about building a hop profile today. And then I'm going to go ahead and spoil it. This was going to be the end of the meeting, but next month we're going to talk about using brewing software. So we're kind of like building the recipe. Today we're focusing on hops. So what do hops contribute to brewing? They contribute bitterness, aroma, and flavor. Those are the main things we're going to focus on today. They also help out with mouthfeel, foam and lacing, and flavor stability. So when you're building your recipe, the first thing to think about is what you're trying to achieve. Are you going for more of a fruity flavor, spicy, floral, earthy? And that's going to depend upon the style of beer you're making. You know, you want hops are like the spice in your beer if you compare it to cooking. So if you're making a German Pilsner, you're obviously going to use different hops than if you're making a New England IPA or an English barley wine. So be thinking about, you've got to have your style in mind. And when you are considering the type of hops you want to use. Now, before you use any hops, obviously there are variations depending upon what farm you get it from. Even just the, you know, it could be the same type of hop grown at different latitudes is going to be a little bit different. Or different years, often there's variations. So it's always a good idea before you use a hop to at least like rub your fingers on it, smell your fingers. You can like cold steep it if you really want to try see what it would taste like. That's another option. And then the amount of hops you use, we'll get into this a little bit later. But we'll get into, yeah, the calculating bitterness. And there, if you Google that, there are all sorts of charts and things you can use. And if you're using brewing software, that'll do a lot of the calculations for you to determine the amount of hops that you want to use. So let's just quickly review the different families of hops. The, you know, kind of OG hops are the Germanic hop family. And that includes obviously the noble hops, but other hops as well that are characterized. They have lower alpha acid content and are bred more for aroma. Characteristics would be mainly they're like floral, spicy, herbal. They can be a little bit minty or even sometimes have some citrus, fruity, piney notes. If you look at the slides, you've got examples on there like obviously Saaz, Hallertau, Hirschsprecher, Tettnang, so Liberty, Pearl Crystal, Magnum, Mount Hood. And you're going to use this family of hops and more so like European lagers, especially whether it's a German lager, Czech lager, you know, you've got Pilsners, Helles, Doppelbock, anywhere up to like Vienna lager, Baltic porters. And this family of hops is also commonly used in various Belgian styles of beer, whether you're doing a blonde or a saison or a Trappist ale. The next kind of category of hops would be the English hop family. And these are characterized as like earthy, herbal, woody, grassy. They can be like green, even tea or wood-like. Some examples of these hops would be like East Kent Goldings, Fuggle, Admiral, Challenger, Willamette, Northern Brewer, and hence English hop family are going to use these in the British style beers. So if you're looking at the BJCP guidelines, there's a lot of beers that there's an American version and an English version, whether that's, you know, a pale ale, an IPA, a stout, a porter, a barley wine. So if you're doing the English version, you want to use the English family of hops for that. And then next we get into the Cascade family. And these are traditionally grown in like Pacific Northwest, sometimes New Zealand, but they are kind of like bigger and badder. Going back to sorry, my dog's slipping around on the floor. The differences between English and American styles and these various styles. In general, the American version is just like pumped up. Like America is bigger and badder, and we just put a little more oomph in everything, specifically the hops. So your Cascade family of hops is just going to be more pungent, piney, citrusy, especially like orange and grapefruit. It's going to be like resinous, floral, herbal. Some people even think that some of these hops can be catty. But common examples would be like Cascade, Centennial. You got Falconer's Flight, Chinook, Columbus, Amarillo. Even Mosaic would be in this category. Lemon Drop, Zeus, Simcoe. And these are obviously used in IPAs, but also American styles of like a wheat, an amber, a brown, a porter, a stout, even a barley wine. And then our final family, there's all sorts of different names for this. I'm calling it the tropical family. And a lot of these are newer hops. And if you think of like any IPAs that are popular now, this is a lot of hops that they use. So these hops have fruitier personalities. There might be like apricot or passion fruit, grapes, even like white wine-esque or gooseberry. And here we've got Citra Galaxy, Sriracha Ace, like the Nelson Sauvin is a good one for white wine examples, and Hallertau Blanc. Your Cashmere, El Dorado, Whole Melon, Topaz, Vic's Secret. These are all, distinctly different than the other families we talked about. And a lot of them are newer. And yeah, they're really good in any IPAs. They can be used in pale ales. They're also good if you're going to be making like a Brett beer or a sour or a fruited ale. Look at this hop family. They would complement it well. All right. So the next slide gets into aroma hops versus bittering hops. And your aroma hops, which you're going to add later, we'll get into this, they generally have lower alpha acid contents. So they are contributing more to the flavor and aroma of the beer. And like the noble hop family is in here. Whereas your bittering hops are higher in alpha acid content, which creates more bittering. You're going to add those earlier in the boil. And if you're going for like an American IPA, that's when you bump up the bittering hops. They're a little bit less refined in flavor and aroma. And there are hops that are dual purpose hops. And if you look at the slide, there's a breakdown of alpha acid percentages. Any hops you buy, you should be able to see what the alpha acid percentage is. So that's a good way to tell if you should use it as an aroma hop or a bittering hop, or the dual purpose hop is kind of that happy 6 to 10% alpha acid content. So like Columbus, Cluster, Pearl, Centennial, Northern Brewer, even Mosaic are good dual purpose hops that you could use for either bittering or aroma. I printed out my presentation and I didn't number my slides. So I think is the next slide, the common bittering hops. Is that where we are? Did I list some of those? Thank you. Okay. So Magnum is just like a go-to as far as common bittering hops. There's a list you can see there, and obviously you can come back to this video. We post the slides on the forum under meeting notes if you want to come back and reference it sometime. So when we talk about bitterness, basically we are talking about isomerized alpha acids. So the alpha acids in the hops, the resin is insoluble in water until it is boiled. And the longer the boil, the greater percentage of the alpha acid that will be isomerized. And that is where the beer gets the bittering component from. So like if you're a professional brewery, I don't know many home brewers that have a spectrometer, but the way that you're actually measuring the bitterness, you are looking for that. But recently, so there's also auxiliary bittering compounds, and this is kind of newer as late hopping and dry hopping have become more popular. These are detected by a spectrometer as well and also contribute to bitterness. I mean, the isomerized alpha acids is primarily what you're thinking of and traditionally what we consider to be the bittering component. but other compounds, such as oxidized alpha acids, beta acids, derived compounds, and certain polyphenols, can be detected by the spectrometer at the same level and do contribute bitterness to your beer. So calculating bitterness, I hope Jared is watching because he requested this and it is not my forte. So don't ask me questions about this. But there are different equations out there. I picked the one that looked easiest, and this is specific for homebrewers based on like a 5-gallon batch. So you've got your IBUs, which is your international bittering unit that is used to measure the level of bitterness in the beer. To determine that, you take the ounces of hops times the alpha acid percentage times the percent utilization, which the next slide has a graph of that. We'll get into that in a minute, and then divide it by 7.25. This is the easiest equation I found. There are different equations out there that are more complex, but trying to keep it simple. So you can see the example on this slide. If you are making just a basic pale ale, you're using Cascade hops, you're using them as your bittering hop in the boiling. You can see the 1 ounce there. So you do 1 ounce of boiling hops, you got 6% alpha acid, the 30% utilization we're going to get off the table in the next chart. Basically from that, you've got 24.8 IBUs. And then you're going to throw in 1.5 ounces as a late addition to get some flavor in there. That's going to contribute 15.8 IBUs. It's, just because it's not boiling as long, it's not contributing as much bitterness. You're getting more of the flavor off of that. And then you're going to, at flame out, throw in 1 ounce, another ounce. So when you add up all those IBUs, you've got 44.7 total IBUs. And this is, by the way, the Fred Eckhart formula for homebrewers is what that is. And there are many of them out there. So the next slide is the percent utilization for hops for a 5-gallon batch. And that is where I was getting those numbers from. And it's basically how long you're leaving the hops in the boil is what the percentage utilization is what it's called in this. But that's the alpha acids that are isomerized during the boil process, essentially, as we talked about. Okay, done with the math stuff. So some fun facts about IBUs. They are perceivable at 10 to 100 IBUs. So if you're looking at the BJCP style guidelines, there are like 100 is, I think, the highest that any style goes to as far as range of IBUs. And you've got like some barley wines and double IPAs up there, but that's about it. I remember this is maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, like Dogfish Head had an experiment where they, I forget what it was, but it was like way over 100, maybe 140 or 180 IBU beer. And they were trying to see if people could tell a difference. But essentially, like, your palate is just done at 100 IBUs. The threshold for most people to like tell a difference in bitterness is like 4 to 6 IBUs. But there's also like 25% of the population that can't even like perceive bitterness. So that's something to consider as well. And there's a little chart on there, general IBU guide. So obviously your lagers are going to be low IBUs. You don't want those to be bitter. And then you work your way up to like the, double IPA is way up there. That's a bitter beer. And then you got a little bit of everything in between. But if you're looking to brew a specific style, check the BJCP guidelines because that is one of the parameters that they use. So when you're working on your recipe, if you have a style in mind, definitely look into it. So a few tips as far as using bittering hops. You want to use a lower level of bitterness if you're going to be adding certain phenols to the beer, like spice, or if you're doing a smoke beer, you don't want that to be super bitter because those just don't work well together. Or if you're going to be adding like acidic fruit or carbonating the beer really high, carbonation can definitely increase bitterness. So if you're going to, that you're going to carbonate this beer high, go for a lower amount of bittering hops, a lower IBU, because the high carbonation is going to increase the perceived bitterness in your beer. And on the other end of that, if you're like going to be putting this beer on nitro gas, or it's going to be a lower carbonation beer, then you're going to want to up your bittering hops to balance that. And if you're making a sweet beer, like say you're throwing strawberries or like a sweet fruit in there, you're going to want to use higher levels of bitterness to balance out that sweetness as well. And so this is kind of newer research that I was just reading about the other night. I think it was actually an AHA seminar that I was watching online, pitch for joining the American Homebrewers Association, because they have amazing seminars online that you can just like turn on in the background and learn everything you ever wanted to geek out on about any brewing topic. But they were talking about the level of cohumulones. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. And so this is like you're already within the category of hops that is bitter. And I gotta look at my notes so I don't say this wrong. So if it has a lower level, like 28% is the threshold I saw, or less of cohumulones, then it's going to be like a smoother bitterness, and that's going to be better for like your blondes and your lagers. So I mean, pretty much every beer, even if it's a Pilsner, you still have bittering hops in there. I mean, nowadays, maybe not any IPAs, but that's a different topic. Regardless of the style, you're probably going to have bittering hops. So if you want it to be like a smoother bitter, then you want to use something like Magnum. And if you're doing that double IPA or that barley wine and you want a little roughness on there and be like, yeah, America, then go for the CTZ hops or something that's got a higher percentage of the cohumuloin. All right, done with bittering hops. Next is flavor and aroma hops. So these can be added at like 3 different times. The traditional way to do it is a late kettle addition. Like in the last 10 to 15 minutes of your boil, you throw these in. And you're going to get more flavor and aroma from these because the alpha acids aren't going to isomerize as much during the boil. So we have charts coming up that show the various compounds that you get from hops, and it wait to the next slide. But when you see that, you'll realize that, yeah, when you boil it for 60 minutes, you're not getting that flavor and aroma, like all that stuff boils off. So you want to add for flavor and aroma towards the end of the boil. Another way to do that is called whirlpool additions, which we've got another slide on, or then dry hopping. And a general rule for the amount of hops used for aroma hops would be 1 to 3 ounces per gallon for an IPA. For like a pale ale, you're going like half of that, like 0.75 to 1.25 per gallon. And there have been studies done that show that if you're using more than like 2 ounces a gallon, you're just not getting the return. You're kind of wasting your money and effort on using that many hops. Some people still like to do it, whatever makes you happy. All right, here's the graphs on aroma compounds. These are the various hop compounds that provide like aroma and flavor in your beers. And you can see that they quickly decrease once you get past like 10, 15, 20 minutes in the boil. They just straight disappear. So you're just getting the bitterness off of it. And that is why certain hops, especially with lower alpha acid percentages, you just want to use later on. All right, getting specifically into whirlpool additions. So the term comes from professional brewing. It is after flame out. A lot of professional brewers will create like a whirlpool, and that'll settle out the trube. And they do that before chilling and transferring. So that's where the term whirlpool comes from. Some homebrewers do it. Sometimes I like stir my pot a little to get a whirlpool going. But yeah, I don't know if I actually ever have a actual whirlpool going in my brew. Anyway, so temperature range, there's a lot of literature out there about this and like new studies being done, but essentially anytime after flame out, one article I was reading said don't go below 170. I saw another one that said don't go below 120. So, experiment with it, see what you want. Keep in mind though, when you're doing this, all the other hops you've added before, like the longer and hotter those are in there, the more of the flavor and aroma you're going to lose. So you're adding more, but keep in mind for your calculations that these hops are still in there doing their sciencey thing. Typically a whirlpool addition lasts about 15 minutes. And if you're calculating IBUs for your whirlpool addition, then you're going to use the 5-minute boil calculations for a 15-minute whirlpool addition. And that's just like a cheat way to make up for, you're doing it longer time, but it's at a lower temperature. There was a study that found, I probably should have said what study it was. Anyways, I have sources at the end, so it's somewhere in there. But it compared a beer that hops were added at flame out and chilled quickly, measured the IBUs, and that was about 60% of the IBUs of the same beer that had those hops added with 10 minutes less in the boil. So that kind of gives you an idea, like as your temperature is decreasing, the level of bitterness is decreasing as well. So that's whirlpool additions. Oh, next slide is a picture of Ryan and Jenna Lee and I last year out at Kansas Hop Company. Whenever we did the Homebrewers Day on the hop farm, it was really cool. Thought I'd throw a picture in because there's a lot of text here. And then we get some more text. So dry hopping is like more the traditional way. You're getting more of the aroma here than flavor because you don't have heat applied to it at this time. This is going on after fermentation that we talked about a little. It was last fall sometime. I did like a Hops 101 seminar and got into biotransformation about like hopping while you're fermenting. And that's kind of specific to any IPAs. So we're ignoring that for right now. You can go back to that seminar if you want. We're just talking about dry hopping. So after your fermentation, you throw a few ounces of hops in there, let it sit for like 3 to 5 days. That's what we're talking about right now. And so that's pretty much going to bring out aromas. And there's been a lot of studies on dry hopping. So you're going to get a higher concentration of the oils if you use pellet hops compared to cone hops. And also with those pellet hops, you want them to be like loose in there. There was a Hopsteiner study that found if they were loosely contained, you got like almost 50% greater extraction than if they were like tightly contained. And I've got a graph coming up for that one too. I like graphs. There was another study, Shellhammer looked into the impact of various dry hop quantities on aroma and flavor and concluded that the dry hop rates higher than like 1.1 ounce per gallon is inefficient use of raw material, which is believed to be due to saturation of oil in the beer. There is another study that found that long dry hop times are not necessary and even decrease the amount of oil extraction. So now we get into more charts. Yay! So this next one is the study about loose hops versus in a tightly woven bag. And I mean, if you just look at that chart, there's a significant difference in the extraction that you are getting. So if you're going to go to all the effort of dry hopping, then you might as well get like the maximum return, right? So then the next two graphs are very different hop compounds, and it's showing the extraction over different days. So you see that you get like most of your extraction is happening in day 1, and excuse me, I need to take a drink. Cheers. But after day 4, it's like diminishing returns. So it's kind of, I don't want to say pointless to dry hop longer than that because you can also control things like diacetyl. But if you're like dry hopping for 2 weeks thinking you're going to get more flavor, or not flavor, but aroma out of it, then that's not the case. Oh, this next slide's for Frank. Since he likes to, every year when we do our seminar on kegging before Brewfest, remind us that we should not put bags of hops in the keg. This is an example of what happens when you leave hops in your keg. That's Angelo dumping out a keg on the floor of Yankee Tank. So, in summary,
I think
basically we
we've
want to.
missed a slide.
Did
So
I?
I see a couple of. Yeah, it looks like we missed a picture.
Oh, dang it. Was it the Angelo picture?
Yeah, it just says, and this is what happens when you put. Let me dig through the thing. We can move on. I'm gonna dig through.
I pulled it off Facebook. It was something he posted a while ago.
We might have to come back. I'll see if I can find that picture for us.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Well, in summary, choose the types of hops that you want to use based on their characteristics and what it will impart to the style of beer that you're brewing. I mean, not to say that you couldn't brew a Pilsner and use like lemon drop hops. That sounds interesting. But if you're entering your beer in a competition, as a judge, I'm going to be looking for those saucer type, like noble hop flavor from it. So, I mean, do whatever you want. But if you're entering in a competition or trying to stay true to style, check the BJCP guidelines. And just in general, your higher alpha acid hops add more bitterness. And among bittering hops, higher cohumulone levels add a harsher bitterness. Flavor and hop aromas can be added as a late addition, whirlpool, and or dry hopping. And you can use those IBU calculations if you just really like doing math and or gluten for punishment or something. Or you can Google it, and there are all sorts of charts and calculators that'll do this for you. Or brewing software has these built-in calculators. That's what I always use. And we will get into brewing software next month. The end. I'm going to check YouTube and Facebook comments and see if there are any questions. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for listening. Cheers.
Sorry, I've got a lot of buttons to click to get things to happen. I'm gonna run back to that slide that we missed. And what is what's going on in this slide? There's literally way too many things for me to look at one now. So it looks like Angelo's kind of laying on his back, digging into a keg of some sort.
Yeah, I think he put a bunch of hops in the keg and then had to invert the keg and dig them out with his hand.
Ah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You can see like all the nasty hops on the ground there. I think he's got a hop bag in his hand even.
Yeah, that's not all that.
Doesn't look like fun, especially to do at home. Like he can power wash that floor. I can't do that in my bathroom.
Not all that dissimilar from Brewfest. Oh God, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago where the homebrewer had just thrown a handful of loose leaf hops, like whole cone hops, into the keg. And obviously it didn't serve at the party, but we eventually, just after the taps were done, we got a pitcher and was just opened the lid and was pouring the beer into a pitcher and then pouring from the pitcher into glasses. And by the time we were done pouring all the beer out into the pitcher and into glasses, the pitcher was literally full to the brim of whole cone hops. Just an absurd amount of hops stuck in the keg. And obviously the dip tube was getting clogged up every time it was trying to get pushed through with carbon dioxide. It's damn good beer, though.
Okay, well, I understand why you make that point in that case. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the second year. The first year was cocoa nibs. Someone had put a bunch of loose cocoa nibs in the bottom of a keg, and they're just the right size to get stuck up inside the dip tube. Whereas at least the leaves were just hitting the dip tube and stopping the liquid flow. The cocoa nibs were getting stuck up in there, causing more restriction, and sort of turbulent flow through the dip tube, which caused it to be really super foamy at the faucet head.
Awesome.
If anybody hasn't noticed, I'm kind of wasting time at this point. Ryan has left us for the evening. He's, like he said, he is moving to a new place. If someone knows, I don't know if that's in Lawrence or he's still in Johnson County or not. That being said, there is no AHA slides like he likes to do at the end of it. So we're pretty much barring anybody having questions from the YouTubes or the Facebook streams. I'm trying to see some of the chat. I don't know. See, there's been much chat tonight, but
yeah, I don't see any questions.
Yeah, I see a couple of drinkers. A storm. Looks like Lee had some Storm Chaser. Looks like one of our local homebrewers had some hazy IPA, which I believe I had earlier this week with Callista hops. It was an amazing little IPA. If you check our Facebook group on Facebook, or our Facebook group at Lawrence Brewers Group, and the reason it's Lawrence Brewers Group, if nobody's ever heard this story, people were confusing Lawrence Brewers Group, the Facebook group, and Lawrence Brewers Guild, the Facebook page, and posting to the page as if they were talking to us in the group. And one day I was, to avoid confusion, changed it to Brewers Guild and Brewers Group, and no one's made that mistake since then. So the slight name change is just to help people know who they're talking to if they're posting to our public page or they're talking to the group where you can communicate with everybody. Storm Chaser and the Riley. What's the Riley?
His daughter's name is Riley, and she's a redhead, and he made a red ale for Riley. Isn't that cute?
Okay, so that's an M&T Brewing special beer. I didn't realize that was a homebrew too. Yeah, so I guess Travis and Mike are M&T, and they've been brewing together for quite a few years, and they've quite as professional as a home brewer gets in his garage, I think, with technology and whatnot set up. So they're on Facebook. We've talked about them a couple of times. They're M&T Brewing on Facebook, and then they've got their own private stuff that they post to. But anybody else in the meeting, in the chat, have questions, comments? Anybody? All right. Well, we're about an hour, I guess. Any questions? It's all in the forums. We're still kind of feeling this out as everybody else is these days. Hopefully at some point we can get a little bit more in-person contact once things get safer. But until then, I guess we'll see you guys later, right?
Are we just closing the live streams and drinking on Zoom?
Yeah, we can. We purposely can. I don't know. This is Ryan's Zoom call, and until people leave it all, will it be available? So if one of you guys want to post this current Zoom link from the forum, the officer section of the forum, into the Facebook or the YouTube, because it's different from what we're doing in standard Wednesday happy hours, I think. So we can do that, but have a good night, I guess. I've got to click some more buttons, which is a lot of things.
She called me late last night, say she loved me so. Didn't matter anymore. I say she never cared and that she never will. Do it all again, I guess I'll have to wait until then. If I get drunk, well, I'll pass out on the floor now, baby. You won't bother me no more. If you're drinking, well, you know that you're my friend, and I'll say, I think I'll have myself a beer. She called me late last night, say she loved me so. But I guess she changed her mind. Well, I should have known it wouldn't be alright. But I can't live without her, so I won't even try. If I get
say. Maybe next time I'll remember what to do. She looks like heaven, maybe this is hell. She said she'd do it all again. She promised not to tell.